In this workflow video about the design development, I'll provide an overview of the phase, looking at the overall goal, looking at modeling and simulation. What kind of models are we looking for? What kind of detailing are we looking for thermal models, simulations of visual comfort, etc. And I'll take a look at the conclusions and next steps from this phase. Inside the phase of design development, we can now start preparing for the actual construction of our building, implementing the concepts of form, rooms and facades that we specified and optimized in the pre-design. So this phase is really taking our simple concept and turning it into an actual building information modeling, keeping it very generic. We're not going in and dividing our constructions into two different layers. We're working with the knowledge to investigate which kind of constructions and materials we want to implement in the following process. So what we're working on here is really using the inputs like solar radiation analysis to place windows, size windows, and begin to actually develop the actual geometry of our building. And here is just a quick example from Henning Larsen here, where we use these different types of analysis for creating concepts that we want to implement in the actual design. And also in this phase to use things like great renderings to visualize the intent of our design. And then we can begin implementing things like thermal models, looking at the combined building and the zone relations in their combination and layout within the building, optimizing heating and cooling loads by optimizing and choosing the right combination of materials. And again, looking at things like acoustic simulations, optimizing material properties, etc. And of course doing more studies like solar rays for looking at the actual shading devices, etc. And in this phase also implementing more detailed tools that has a better interoperability with building information modeling geometry like 3ds Max Design and other tools. And in the end, of course, bring this together in a schedule where we can combine all the different inputs and make sure that the building is performing the right way. Let's take a bit more deep dive into modeling and simulation inside the design development. Because we're now working with more geometry and more complex modeling types, this sets more standards or more requirements for the simulations that we're implementing. Inside Revit, we can now, instead of using simple massing geometry, work with things like exporting our model as GPXML, using the interior print of the room for exporting to more detailed simulation program, but as well using in this phase still tools like EcoCheck analysis for optimizing the heating and cooling loads and investigating which type of material we are implementing in the project. So here, for example, we can go in and select the walls in the project, and we can go here and work with which type of materials, and then being able to quickly investigate the impact of different material combinations. And also in this phase, we can really implement a lot of the things that we did developing our concepts for placement and sizing our windows on our model, which is really one of the key things here. So in this case here, just to make the facades a bit more closed, where we have a lot of radiation, and more open on the north side to have more daylight coming into the room. And what we're also looking for here is investigating the interior visual comfort and thermal comfort of our building in more combined layout of the building. So because we're working with more detailed geometry, we often have different types of models that we're working on. Here is just an example of a thermal model inside EcoCheck, and then we can lay out a more detailed geometry to help us visualize the impact of wall thickness, etc. on the visual comfort inside the building. And then again, at a later stage, and really here we can also begin to implement tools like 3ds Max Design that really has a great interoperability with more complex model geometry, where we can also study the actual shading devices, look at the reflections from materials, etc. inside our building. And in this phase here, we'll also often look for other things inside Revit and using external calculation programs, looking for having the right square meters, looking for having the right visual interpretation of our building. And again, in this phase, we will also begin to prepare for the collaboration with engineers, begin working with which kind of active systems we want to implement in our building. Conclusions and next steps in the design development is, as in any phases of sustainable design, an important factor. So in this phase, we will really go in and benchmark our project for validation during the construction phases and look at things that we require for things like LEED certification and other national standards or programs that we will need. Here in Denmark, we're using the BE10, which we have to validate in. So already at this stage here is pretty critical to align with the way that these programs are thinking. But creating that foundation is really the key in here. And of course, to be able to collect the data and be able to make sure that we have the right constructability of our building, that we have the right energy profile, that we have the right visual comfort within inside our building before starting doing any really detailed design and before actually beginning to implement the actual systems and constructions and products that we want to implement.